Wicked cool. Feature alert.
Hey there, podcast fans. Thanks for listening. Now, you can also reach out and send me a text message. On every episode, at the top of the show notes, you'll see a link that says, send us a text message. Simply click it, write something super nice and sweet, and away we go. Also remember to please subscribe, share this podcast with a friend by telling them about it, and leave us a positive review, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, your favorite podcast streaming service, or even on our website at www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com. Hello, loyal listeners. It's been a while. A little bit of housekeeping notes to get us going. I got a new job. So I've been working the past 9 weeks, and that's why it's taking me a while to get this episode up, and there's been a little bit of a gap. So hopefully now that I'm in the groove at my new job, I'll be able to pick up the pace in the coming summer months. So thanks for your patience. We have got a great episode with Todd Wilcox to talk about the quantum room. So I think you'll really enjoy it. Also want to give a shout out to my friend Kai Evans. Usually I get 5-star reviews from Prozac and Viagra and all those spots, but Kai recently gave me one that warmed my heart. It goes as such. 5 stars. It sucks you in from the start. Hi from South Wales, UK. I have been listening to Bob's podcast for some time now, and it really pulls you in from the start. I love listening to them while I am driving, and sometimes want to drive further just so I get to listen to the whole podcast. I also like relaxing on the sofa while listening. It sucks you in from the start. Love it. Keep them coming, Mr. Heskey. Thanks, Kai, and everybody keep those reviews coming. It doesn't take long. You can do it on my website. You can do it on iTunes, Apple, wherever you listen to it. It really helps drive people to the show. Also, a shout-out for Kai. Kai Evans has a band called Rock Monkey, so if you're ever in South Wales, you may see him playing somewhere in bars of ill repute and good repute and whatever repute, but it's a fun band, and I think you should check it out. So if you're in South Wales, look for Kai Evans' band, Rock Monkey. A couple other quick notes. One, I've been getting a lot of people reaching out to see if they can be on my show, but they're promoting fiction books, and I don't really do that. I just focus on nonfiction if it's related to the paranormal and is of something I think is high interest to my audience. So I don't mean to disregard writers who write fiction, but on this show, we focus for the most part on nonfiction, if there's an author that has a book about the paranormal, and also about real events that people have. Lastly, if you go to the website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, remember to click that little coffee cup icon. You can buy me a coffee, and also, I think there's a microphone that you can click, and you can leave me a message, and I've only gotten one so far. It's a bit creepy, and this is the one that I've received.
I'm very, very sorry, but you will never succeed because you will never find us. We are everywhere. We are between you, next to you now, maybe sleeping in your bed. Oh, Linda, you don't know what you have opened there. Maybe the box of the Pandora, but I don't think so. People will never believe for real who we are. We are here. We were here. And we always will be here.
So, with that as a setup, remember, I'd like to hear from more of you guys and hear some positive things when you click that microphone. But enough said, let's get on with the show, The Quantum Room, with Todd Wilcox.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
We are here with tonight's guest, Todd Wilcox, the Slipstream Shaman. Todd has had a lifelong fascination with alternative healing, consciousness expansion, and human potential. His first book, Slipstream Shaman, Using Quantum Healing for Individuals, Communities, the Planet, and Beyond, was recently published, and his next two books in the series will be out soon. Todd also loves talking about the paranormal and hosts a radio program called My Side of the Universe. His website is www.slipstreamshaman.com. That's www.slipstreamshaman.com. All right, Todd, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Robert. I'm excited to be here, and I absolutely love to talk, so it should be a fun time for us today.
Yeah, I love to listen, so I think it's going to work out for both of us.
Perfect.
So, the name is totally unique. I did a documentary called Afraid of Nothing, and there was a shaman in it who recently passed, unfortunately, but he found shamanism in midlife. He had an awakening. He told me on one of the podcast interviews, it wasn't like I was learning. It was like a veil was opened and I was relearning what I already knew, and he would get downloads and all these different things that helped him on his journey. So I'm wondering, how did you enter into the world of shamanism?
It's funny. What he described to you, what the shaman described to you is very similar to what happened to me. I was like you said earlier, I've had a lifelong fascination with things that are just off to the side, alternative things. And so what happened for me was I was in a paranormal group. And when you're in these groups, you start to know people from other groups. And one day I got a call from another group inviting me to join a secondary group. And this group was going to be a team that went to help people that nobody else could. And I thought, well, that's great. My purpose is to help. So I want to be involved in this. And so as the group formed and we started talking, the question I asked was, what are we going to do that's different? Because chances are the people that haven't been able to help them is us. Our teams haven't been able to help these people. What's going to be different with this group? Just because we're a bunch of people from other groups doesn't make it better, doesn't make us able to help these people. What do we need to learn? What do we need to do to help them? And we started bouncing around ideas. One of the people suggested bringing in a shaman to learn some energy work for protection, for healing, and that kind of thing. And that really rang true for me. And when I'm on paranormal investigations, when I'm doing things with the quantum healing and shamanism, when I know I'm on the right track, the hair on my arms just stands up. When something exciting is going on when we're helping people with a paranormal investigation, the hair stands up on my arms. I know I'm on the right track. So as soon as they said shaman and energy work, I knew we were where we needed to be. We brought in a shaman to teach us, and she was very good. The problem was she felt that there was only one way to do things, and that's really not the case. And as she was describing our energy, what we should be finding, my energy was vastly different than what she was describing. And so I struggled to be a part of this training because it wasn't meshing with me. And so I was a good boy. I stayed quiet and let her do the training, and I paid attention so that when I was by myself, I could do the training on my own and not have it interfered with by her experience. Her energy, like I said, was completely different than mine. Mine was a light blue at the time and cold. Hers was a dark color that was hot. And she thought that we should have the same type of energy. And everybody's energy is different. It's no different than a fingerprint or a snowflake. Everybody has different energy. And so I started practicing what she taught us, bringing our hands together, feeling that energy between our palms. You've got the chakras in your palms, and you can start feeling the energy as you bring your hands close together. And so I started experimenting with that. And it started off by just finding my energy. Like I said, it was light blue at the time and cool. And then seeing where it took me. And where that energy ended up taking me was to a place that I eventually called the quantum room. And that was when I knew that something big was happening for me. When I got to this quantum room where I could actually make changes, where I could meditate without falling asleep, where I could invite almost anything to come see me, and it would. And so once I found the quantum room, it's when everything changed. And so that was the start for me, is through paranormal groups, a shaman started to teach. I realized that the teacher isn't always right. And that's one of the things that I really emphasize when I'm working with people is your experience is going to be different than mine. And that's okay. Go with your experience. Nobody's right. Nobody's wrong. Everybody has their own unique way of finding and using their energy.
Quick question, if you don't mind interjecting. The quantum room, is that something the shaman told you about, or did you find that on your own?
That was completely organic for me. And really what the shaman taught us was how to find our energy and to put it on us for protection. And I did that. I put it on me for protection. I put it on houses for protection. I put it on around my family for protection. But then one day while I was just working with the energy, all of a sudden I was in my quantum room. And what it looked like at that time was, imagine being in the center of a big thundercloud. It was kind of a dark gray, misty, everything's moving around. And I would invite things to come see me. When I was developing a warrior team, and different animals would come to me. I was working with people on their health, and they would come to me in this room. And it's that place where I get to that's pure energy and spirit. And that's what shamanism is all about, going to a place of energy and spirit and making changes. And when you get to that place, you're able to do almost anything. You're almost like a superhero when you're in that place of energy and spirit. Everything works for you. You have access to everything. It's beautiful. And the wonderful thing is it's available to everyone. Anybody can learn how to find their energy, use their energy, create a place that I call a quantum room, and really do wonderful things for themselves and their friends and other people. It's something everybody has. It's a natural ability that we have, and you just have to access it.
Yeah, just for the audience's perspective, when they look at computers, a standard computer is zeros and ones. It's an either or, right? A quantum computer is 0, 1, or a combination of them. So it's all possibilities. So when you leave your mind, this physical world, and go to the non-physical world where there's all possibilities, depending what you vibrate into, that's the big difference, right? All these possible outcomes are there.
Absolutely. And what a beautiful, clean, elegant way of saying it, Robert. All possibilities. And that's truly what happens there. And we work on people's energy at that point. We help things get aligned in their body, in their energy body, as well as their physical body. And they make great changes for their health, for their well-being, for their, there's so many people that are just like overwhelmed right now. How am I going to pay rent? How am I ever going to move out? Is my job going to last? A lot of stressors, suffocating stressors. And when you are able to meditate, go inside, go to that special place and find answers, it really brings a lot of clarity and almost cleanliness to your thoughts, to where you're able to think and take action and make a difference in your life instead of staying in that same cycle of hurt, anxiety, and fear.
Now, is the quantum room like the Akashic Records, where you can kind of ask questions and it could lead you to something? Or is it a precog ability where I think you do a lot of stuff. You do healing there as well. So I'm just wondering the different type of tasks that you can do in the quantum room.
Yeah. really anything. I have not tried to access the Akashic records from it, but it's where I go to work with my guides. And I have different levels of guides. I have some high level guides that people that know me aren't surprised are all alien. Not one of them has a human form. Their energy is not human. And those are my highest level guides. And then, and I hate to say below it, but it's more of a nuts and bolts type of guide below that is the animal spirit guides. And I actually have 3 now. It started off, the first one I got was the elk, the bull elk. The second one I received, and it was the same day, was Sasquatch. And then years later, a giraffe came to me. So now I have 3 the animal spirit guides that help me do things. And with the animals, it's when they meet me in the quantum room, it's a physical touch understanding what they're telling me. I'll be the right size to hug the Sasquatch, to hug the elk, to hug the giraffe. My energy body changes so that we align. And that touch helps me find the answers I need. With that higher level spirit guides, it's all voice conversation, but internal in your head. I'm not actually speaking out loud, but I can hear my words going to them, and I can hear their words coming to me. So really 2 different experiences that way. Those are my own healings. And then when I'm working with people in the quantum room or somebody's house or whatever the case may be, that's in the quantum room, and I'm inviting aspects of them to come see me. And I work with a warrior team and a love team to help align their energy and get things right.
So a couple quick questions. The upper echelon spirit guides, I've heard some shamans talk about them as angels.
Sure.
Are they angels, or how would you describe those entities?
I think they would fall into an angel category. They are definitely a high-powered energy that is very positive, like an angel would be, very enlightening. They don't look like when you go to the Sistine Chapel and see angels. That's not what they look like. They are very alien looking. They don't fly around like the angels you see in different pictures. But yes, their energy is certainly on an alignment with what people would call angels. And so I would say that that's through the centuries, as people find these spirit guides, I could certainly see them calling them angels and having them look at as angels.
Yeah, and I've heard you on other podcasts say, I think you believe in reincarnation or being in having different lives, but this is the one life where you're a human. A lot of your past lives were like alien forms, so you almost feel like it was your first time here. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's really accurate. And I have not a single time that I've traveled my timeline have I been in a human body other than this one. And some are very, very different than us. And so far, I've only been just at the moment of death. I haven't spent time seeing what that life was like. I'm just seeing the last few seconds of life. One was almost insect-like, and everything was in segments. My watch band looks very similar to what everything looked like, with different segments that would move very easily. I did have 2 arms and then these weird appendages at the end that would be kind of like a baseball mitt, but segmented. Another past life, I looked a bit like a turtle, if you can picture a turtle standing up, really bowed legs, a wide body like a turtle, and walking really, really bow-legged as you walk. And both of those were end-of-life experiences, and the other ones as well. And so I'm not quite sure why I don't get to see more of these lives, just the end. I'm very curious of what that'll be like when I finally get to see how I lived in some of these lives.
So do you believe in aliens and UFOs, or do you think they're from our universe or from another dimension?
I do believe in them, yes. I think there's a dimensional quality that helps them to transport themselves through so much distance. I can tell you a story about, we talked about my radio show, My Side of the Universe, and And with many of my guests, I would have people that had been abducted by aliens or that studied it, and we'd be talking, and I would make a joke that I keep hoping that the aliens will abduct me, and I'm going to commandeer the ship, and I'm going to go wherever I want. And I thought I was really clever and really funny, right?
Yeah.
And without fail, every single one of them said, "Oh, Todd, don't say things like that. Don't make light of this. Don't be funny. You don't know what you're getting into." And I, of course, just kept doing it. And one night I'm traveling, and I love going on the old country roads, the back roads instead of the interstate. And I was on a smaller road, and I absolutely love those old L-shaped motels that usually had a swimming pool in the front. And that's where I like to stay when I'm traveling, is a small motel like that, on roadside motel. And I found one and got a room. And before bed, I was looking out. They had this little tiny window. It was only like a foot high and about 3 feet across. And I could look out that to the behind this motel. And it was just a kind of almost like a junkyard. There was broken down wash machines and refrigerators and vehicles and all kinds of equipment like that back there. It was kind of a mess. And laid down, watched some TV, and fell asleep, and was awakened later. The whole back of that room was gone. The whole back wall was no longer there. It was open. And different aliens were coming in and out of the room. There was short gray aliens, middle-sized, tall ones, insect-looking ones. There was a thing that looked kind of like a tumbleweed. Various, you name the alien, it was there. And they made me stand up, and they kind of surrounded me, like, you see on TV where somebody walks down the wrong street and all of a sudden a gang of people comes and surrounds them.
Yeah.
It was very much like that. And they made it clear that me making fun of the abduction experience, me making fun of their ability to do what they were doing, and pretending like I had the kind of power needed to take over one of those ships was unacceptable and needed to stop. Mm-hmm. And I felt it right down to my core that we are no longer, I am no longer making fun of this and making light of it and making these jokes. And they also told me that as reinforcement, that they wanted to make it clear that they had the power to stop me from doing things. And as a result of what I was saying, I was going to be sick for 3 days. Oh. They told me this: you're going to be sick for 3 days, and we want you to think about this the whole time. Then they all left. The wall reappeared, for lack of a better term. It was no longer, where you could walk out the back. I laid down, went to sleep, and woke up violently ill sometime later that night. And I was deathly ill for 3 days, to the point that I thought maybe I had radiation poisoning, and I was getting ready to go to the hospital when it finally got better. I was only going to stay there one night, but I was too sick to travel. And so luckily there was room available that I didn't have to leave. And I was very sick. They were not happy with me, and they let me know it. So yes, I believe in aliens, and I think they can move through dimensions.
I do have a question. So the ones that you saw, the wide range, did any of them look like the ones that you saw in your near-death experiences of aliens?
Oh, great question. And I hadn't ever thought of that, but no, none of them did. And I feel like the segmented thing that I had the experience with, I don't think there was any kind of technology that could have done something like that with that one, possibly with the turtle-looking one.
Yeah.
But yeah, none of them looked like the past lives I had. And it's funny that I never thought about that. So yeah, wonderful question, Robert. I wish one had and would have chatted with me a little bit.
Yeah, Mom. You never know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Were any of the aliens that you saw more dominant than the others? Was there like a class of them, or were they all just different species that were?
They seem to be different species. I would say that the very tall gray and the insect, bit like a praying mantis, but more human-shaped than a praying mantis, those two seem to be in charge. But there was no clear, general or anything like that. But those two seem to be more in charge, maybe a little more powerful than the others.
And did they all kind of communicate telepathically or through a chittery type language, or was it just a one or two that communicated to you?
It felt like the group was communicating to me.
All right.
I didn't hear different voices, but I felt like it was from all of them at once,
Yeah.
and it was in English, or I was able to translate it. I'm not sure which, but yeah, it sounded like they were all giving me the same message at the same time, but I couldn't make out individual voices or anything.
And when in your life was this? Was this when you were already on your journey to be a shaman, or before, after, or?
Yes, I had been using my energy for probably 10 years, maybe a little longer at this point, and had the quantum room, had the warrior team, was helping people on a very limited basis. It was mostly still just learning, practicing, exploring at that point. Probably it was a good 10 years into the being on the trail to being a shaman.
Which is probably why they had no sense of humor, because you're on the trail of being a shaman, you're enlightened, and then you took a sidestep to jocular ridicule, and that's where it was just probably a stern lesson, I guess, for you.
Yes, and it was certainly stern, and I took heed, and I never want to be that sick again.
All right, jeez, wow, and this Slipstream Shaman. I mean, let's go into this. If you could talk about what that means and how you started to write the book, because the book you wrote, if I understand correctly, it's not a heavy lift. I mean, the first half is intended to. So you said everybody can do this, is to really guide them with very user-friendly language, and the last half of the book kind of validates kind of the experiences that you had as a basis of using these fundamentals. So could you just kind of walk us through Slipstream Shaman? How is that different from a normal shaman, which I guess might be the quantum room? And tell us about your book a little bit.
Yeah, perfect. So at the end of the day, when you boil everything down, and I really like things boiled down to their essence, when you boil down what shamanism is being able to go to a place of spirit and energy and make change. And I'm on a different trail than most people. I like to say it's the newest trail in shamanism, and it's all about speed. So when shamans first started working thousands of years ago, however long it's been, things were different. It was a much slower pace. There wasn't this push for everything. There was no quick information. It was slow. There was time to do things. And that's how these things work with most shaman. It's a 2 or a 3 day process. You might get buried in dirt for 2 days to find something. You might take ayahuasca and throw up for 2 days to find what you're looking for, which terrifies me. I don't like throwing up, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So it's about speed. And that's where the slipstream part comes in. When we're looking at quantum, which is, everything all at once, all the possibilities, the speed of quantum is what led me to slipstream. And the word slipstream, one of the ways you can use a slipstream is, I want you to think about driving down the freeway and you're going 65 and you look down at the tachometer on your car and it's showing you at 2,000 RPMs and you're just cruising along. And then a semi pulls up alongside you and kind of pushes you out of the way. The air around the semi pushes you off to the side a little bit. And then it goes past you and it sucks you back over towards where it was. And that's part of its slipstream. Now, if you get behind it, you're in the slipstream of that truck and it's going 70 miles an hour. You're going 75 miles an hour, but you look at your tachometer and instead of being at 2,000 RPMs, it's dropped down to 1,800. You're going faster using less energy. And that's what being a slipstream shaman is all about, is how do we get results fast? My intention, my plan is, if you get the book or if you go to the online training, that day you're creating a quantum room. You've learned how to find your energy. You've learned how to get to your quantum room. You're learning how to meditate without falling asleep. You're starting to make changes in your life. And that's what the whole thing's about. You can read that book 2 to 3 hours. You can go through the online training 2 to 3 hours doing all the practice. And then you just have to practice and go on adventures. And that's the fun part. I have this wonderful office and it has thousands of books in it. I love reading. And I've got a lot of books from authors that have signed it for me because of that radio show. I go into other people's libraries and, their offices, their dens, and they've got 50 to 100 books. And I'll ask them, how many of these have you read? And the answer is always somewhere between 0 and 3. And they've got hundreds of these books. And what happens is you get a lot of the books, and people want you to have value, right? So put a lot of information in these books, but what it does is overwhelms you, and you don't get the use out of them because there's so much to try to remember, so much to put in place, and what if I do this wrong? And many people just get tired of it. And so this whole training that I do is designed. If you ordered it right now, say on Kindle, you could be reading it and taking action in the next couple hours. If you ordered it as a book, you'll get it in a couple days, and that same day you'll be able to take action. If you do the online course, same thing. I want you to be seeing big results the first day you try. When I was taking a neuro-linguistics programming class a few years ago, NLP, one of the teachers was talking about any process that they do in NLP, if it takes 10 steps, he's looking for how I can do it in 8 steps instead. And then once they get it to 8 steps, he's trying for 7 and then for 6. And he's always trying to make it cleaner. And it's almost like, for anybody that's watched The River Runs Through It, the little boys want to go fishing and they're being homeschooled and they write a story and the dad looks at it and he's making different marks and then he tells them, cut it in half. So they're learning how to tell a story with as few words as possible and still have the same impact. And that's what Slipstream Shaman is all about, getting you to that place where you can make really fast changes in your life and help other people in a short amount of time. I want people using it and working it. It would absolutely break my heart if somebody bought my book or got the online training and didn't use it. I don't want it sitting on the bookshelf looking good. It's a beautiful cover, but I want you using it. I want you reading it, taking action, and I do it in a way that you can do it fast and really get those results.
To get to the quantum room, is there like drumming involved or certain music to get you to that frequency that you got to get to, to raise your frequency? Or is that just something in the book they'll find?
Another great question. And you can use rattles. When I first started, I did use rattles to help me keep my energy focused. I don't need that anymore, but you can certainly use rattles. You can use drums. You can go online and find a wave that helps you, a brain wave, whether it's delta or theta or whichever one you feel the most comfortable with, that helps you get into that state. But after you do it for a while, you'll find that you can get into that quantum room, into that meditative state in literally seconds, and then go straight to your room. It takes me about, maybe 10 seconds of breathing and then setting the intent to go to my quantum room, and I'm there. But it used to take a little bit of work. But yeah, the process that I teach takes you right there. But I do love rattles. I make rattles all the time. I give them life. They're for a specific reason, to keep me focused on a certain thing. And this might be a good time to talk about, I'm working on a process for primarily sick children. I want to get them to build a rattle as a family and give it life. And that energy in the rattle will help them focus on a positive outcome. I worked with a young man a few years ago that had cancer for the second time, and they were going to have to take out a big chunk of his mouth to get rid of the cancer and then rebuild it. And so he was terrified, absolutely terrified of this whole process. And so I made him a rattle, and I wanted him to focus on the end result. I wanted him to focus on walking out of the hospital healthy, and it was going to be months before he got out. And so I made this rattle, and I wanted to have teeth imprints, like if you bit an apple, for him to look at to see a healed mouth, what a healed mouth would look like.
Yep.
So I'm not a good artist, so I bit my arm so I could see how the teeth marks looked. And then I marked it on the rattle and then used the wood burner to burn those into it. And I told him, I want you on days that you're feeling good, I want you to take this rattle and just focus on that day you walk out. What it's going to feel like when you hit the sunshine, when you walk out the door, as you're talking to people on the way out. I want you to feel it. And when you're having bad days, when everything hurts, I want you to really use this rattle and focus on that last day, the day you go home healed and healthy and strong. And his mom later told me when I saw him several months later, he runs up, gives me a hug, and then he runs over and starts talking to all his friends at work. And his mom came up and gives me a hug and says, there were days where he was so down and he just took that rattle and he was holding it and looking at those teeth marks and thinking about the day he was going to leave. And it really got him through that. And so I want to make this to where people can make a rattle. I'll show them how to make a rattle, how to bring it to life, how to get the whole family's energy involved in the healing process, because the family needs to be healed as well.
Yeah.
And really focus on that positive end result. And that's called the Glimmer Tree family. And that will be coming out soon as well.
Do you teach people how to self-heal, or do you work with them to heal them?
That's a great question. And it was both. What I found was there are so many people looking for help that I couldn't help enough. And I don't charge for my services. This is something that I feel like it was a gift given to me, and I don't feel right about charging for it. And I'm on heard me on other podcasts. Not quite a year and a half ago, I was on a couple podcasts and really had this great rapport with the audience. And literally thousands of requests came in for healing.
Yeah, sure.
And I tried to do them, and it was almost like I burnt out that part of me that does it. And so I was trying to do like 10 a day and 12 a day and 15 a day to keep up with this influx, and I couldn't do it. And honestly, there are still thousands of people that I haven't gotten back to. And if any of them are listening now and they ask for a free healing, please understand, I have not forgotten you. I'm going to find a way to get to all of you, but I am so far behind. I don't make that offer anymore because it could be years before I get to somebody, and by then it may not be able to help.
How long does it take to typically heal someone? Is it a one and done thing, or is it a course of several days, weeks? I mean, because I would imagine, I'm sure there's no standard, but I mean, to get to 1,000, you'd have to have you mentioned Slipstream, got it done quickly. It'd have to be pretty quick, I would think.
Absolutely. And it takes physical time anywhere from 5 minutes to a half hour. And usually it's a one and done. But it's funny, when I'm doing these things, when I'm in the quantum room, there's two different times taking place. In the quantum room, time is one way. In my physical body, time's another. So sometimes I'll do a session with somebody and 5 minutes has passed with my physical body, but it feels like an hour has passed inside the quantum room. And just the opposite will happen. Sometimes it feels like I'm only with the people for a minute or 2 minutes in the quantum room, when in reality, 20 minutes has gone by for my physical body. So the two don't line up. And a funny thing happens, and something I want people to know is, as they start meditating and doing things and working their path for healing and shamanism, take lots of notes. When you're in the quantum room doing this work, you're in a place that your brain doesn't really understand. The memories don't line up right, and you need to make notes or you're going to forget. If I don't make notes immediately after I'm done with a session, I'll have forgotten almost everything within a half hour. And so it's very important that I use a dictation program or make notes or have somebody write things down for me as I'm doing it as a scribe, because your brain does not sync with the quantum world. They work on, it's like analog and digital trying to work together, and it just doesn't work.
It's like 4D versus 3D.
Yes.
When you get back to the quantum room, do you need to hydrate and need water or something? I would imagine.
Yeah.
Is there any physical follow-up that you need, that it kind of takes something out of you?
It beats me up, and it didn't until I started trying to do 10 or more a day. When I was just doing 1 or 2 a day, I felt nothing. There was no draw, there was no energy loss, there was no side effects. But when I started doing too much, it was just like you look at the capacitors on different things that electricity goes through, and once they burn out, then things aren't working. And I think I burnt out my capacitors, because I actually went a month or two where I could not do anything in the quantum room. So I had to be careful, and I realized that things cleared up for me is that my path, my journey is not so much about doing these individual healings, which I will still do, but where I'm needed and where my focus is teaching others. If we have 100 people or 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people doing some form of this shaman work, imagine where we would go. Imagine what it would do for the way people feel. Imagine how the consciousness of the world would evolve and rise, how our frequency would rise. And so that's my understanding is now. We always get more understanding the longer we go. But what I understand of my purpose, which is to help right now, is that I am a teacher and need to show people how to do this so more and more people can.
Getting back to what I said, hydration, used to have Reiki done on me, a very powerful person who's moved to Florida and whose rates have gone up. Anyways, she was always big on drinking a lot of water when you're done. The other thing you said about learning, do you have downloads periodically? I was wondering how you do your continuous process improvement, how you continue to learn. Do you get downloads? Where do you get information to help you totally refine and improve your craft?
Many times I do just get a download. Yes, it's so miraculous when that happens. The clouds clear. There'll be something I'm working on that's really frustrating that I can't get past, and then I get that download and it's clear. Many times it's in a story form. Sometimes it's just all of a sudden things make sense and I'm able to get past it. And the funny thing is, just like with the when I'm doing a session with somebody, if I don't write those downloads down, I lose them as far as the memory. I'm sure I still have the energy adjustment. My body and my energy body has changed because of the download, but I don't remember it if I don't keep notes and review it from time to time.
And do you get those downloads in the quantum room, outside of the quantum room, or does it matter?
Typically, it's when I'm in the quantum room, when I'm really in a good meditative state and asking for help and asking for guidance is when those usually show up. I'm looking forward to the day that I have a download where I might be driving and all of a sudden get a download and have to pull over and just, really bring it in, one of those spontaneous ones. But so far it's been when I'm in a state where I'm in the quantum room and really, really looking for an answer.
Okay, and here's a kind of an odd question. I apologize, but when you mentioned where you saw your past lives at the death stage, it was all aliens. Have you ever wondered if you're a hybrid versus 100% human, or is that like just too weird of a question? I was just curious.
No, it's not a weird question at all, Robert. And I can assure you that everybody that I know, in addition to myself, has asked that same question.
Okay, all right, good.
And I probably am, and it wouldn't shock me a bit.
Okay, all right, cool. I know you love to talk about shadow people, but before we go there, since one of your spirit animals is a Sasquatch, now that you have that connection, what is your thoughts about Sasquatch, Bigfoot, what they are, what their purpose is here, and their paranormal aspect to them, their intelligence, the quantum side of them? What's your takeaway? What would you tell someone is a real big misnomer about Bigfoot and what they should think about what this creature or entity is?
Yeah, I would say the biggest misnomer is that so many TV shows have run with the idea that if we make this exciting and scary, more people are going to watch. I feel this great love when I'm with my Sasquatch guide. I feel this nurturing. I can't imagine this being doing the things that people talk about, throwing rocks, tearing people in half, busting open a deer, these kind of things. Her energy, it's a female Sasquatch. Her energy is so beautiful and so loving and caring that I can't imagine that being part of who they are. Everybody's different, obviously, and so maybe there's some bad ones, but I would say the biggest thing that I would tell people is they're not there to hurt you. Now, there's going to be times where you're out in the woods, you're doing something, and you're going to get a feeling. You're going to get that spidey sense, whatever you want to call it, that probably shouldn't be there. I do believe they work telepathically, letting you know to stay out of a certain area they're in for whatever reason that they may not want you there. And if you pick up on that, follow it. Go ahead and get yourself out of there. I don't think they're going to hurt you, but for whatever reason, they don't want you there. So I would honor those feelings and get moving. I think they're a dimensional being that can move from dimensions. When I picked up that Sasquatch as my guide, I was walking around a fire, and it was icy and on a slope, and it was treacherous walking. It was really hard to walk. But as I felt her come to me and kind of take over, I was taking these long strides on an icy slope, not sliding a bit. And I looked down a mountain range, and I knew that if I wanted to, I could be as far away as my eyes could see at that second, instantaneously. I think the reason that sometimes you'll follow tracks that just disappear is because they leave this dimension when they want to. And it's the same reason we're not finding deceased ones. I don't know if this is a place that they live. I kind of feel like the Earth is a vacation place for them. Huh. And they come here to get away from it all. I don't think that they're this mean gorilla type entity running around the woods trying to break people in half and eat them.
Yeah, I always found it counterintuitive that these beings that were telepathic and interdimensional and could really just literally disappear would resort to throwing rocks, and if you leave them apples, they're happy. You know, it was kind of weird.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you brought the apple thing up. So I found this wonderful place in central Utah. I would go out there weekly, and one of the guys that I knew would set up different places where he would build a rock cover and put things in it, or put something in a tree to see if anything would manipulate it. So I thought that'd be fun. I took 4 dimes into the woods, and I found a tree that had a branch coming out pretty straight at about 7 feet high. And I mean, I'm on a road that's probably 10 miles away from a very unused secondary road, and then a mile up a dirt road off of that, and then a couple 100 yards off the road, right? It's not a place that you're going to run into somebody. And so I scooted up the tree a little bit, put 4 dimes on that branch, all face up. And I came back and checked it a week later. There was only 1 dime there. And you're thinking, okay, bird, squirrel, whatever. Yeah. I can't find the dimes. They're not on the ground. They're nowhere. And so I was curious what's going on. I left that dime there, came back a week later, and I found the 3 dimes directly below where I had looked the week before. And I mean, I looked hard the week before, and these things were so obvious, just out in the open. There's no way I would have missed them if they had been there the week before. So I put them back up on the tree, and this time I put 2 heads, 2 tails. Next week I come back, and 1 is missing, and they're all heads again. And I did this several times, over the course of 6 months. And then I was going to be moving from that area, and I wanted to do something, to leave a present of some kind. So I go there, and I was just going to say, hey, I'm going to take one of these dimes. The rest is yours. And I go there, and there's 1 dime and a quarter. The other 2 dimes are gone.
Oh, my God.
So I don't know what's going on. I kept the dime. I kept the quarter. Excuse me. I kept the quarter, left the dime. And I've got a picture at home where I'm holding up a dime, and I said, Bigfoot owes me 30 cents.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some fun things you can do with that. And I don't know what happened, but every week something manipulated those coins, and then a quarter showed up. And I didn't tell anybody I was doing it. There was nobody out there that I ever saw. And, there was certainly no vehicles. Possibly somebody saw me, and, maybe there was a trail cam and they figured out what I was doing. I don't know. I saw no sign of human involvement in this thing. There was no tracks around it, nothing. There was no Bigfoot tracks either, by the way.
So the shaman that I used to know that was in my documentary, he did demonic depossession. So when you go to these houses, you do ghost hunting and you use your shamanic abilities. Have you ever used it for demonic depossessions or dealing with demons?
Yeah. And so as I'm working with people, I'm finding many things. The first thing is, and this is about 95% of the time, I find something called a companion. And this is something that started out as something positive for this person. But through the years, it becomes something that hurts them. So picture say you're a 4-year-old boy. You're watching wrestling and you see that the wrestlers have bands tied around their biceps, right? And I'm sure those bands are just there to show off their biceps to help things look more cut and stand out. But the kid sees that and he hurts his arm and thinks, well, those guys have the bands. Maybe it'll help me. So he puts a band on his arm feels better. So right then the arm feels better. What if he leaves it for a week? Is the arm still going to be getting better? Or is it going to start to hurt it? What if he keeps it there for a year? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. What started out as something positive that was helping him has now turned into something that's drastically hurting his arm. And that's most of the work I do, is removing something that's a companion that started out as something positive, removing that from them, giving it cleansing energy so it can heal itself and go off and be something good for the universe again, and use that energy, that positive energy, for somebody else, for something else. And then I heal that part of the person. That's 95% of the time. And then about 4.75% of the time, there's going to be something I call a parasite. And that's going to be something that started with a negative intent. And it might be road rage. You're screaming and yelling at people as you drive. And some of that negative energy gets on somebody, causes trouble, and it starts sucking energy out of them eventually. That's another thing that I find, but less than 5% of the time. And then very rare, and only 3 times out of the thousands that I've done, have I found these things that I call a demon or an alien or whatever you want to call it. These things are not normal. These are monsters. And getting rid of those, working with those, is very difficult because they're very strong. You don't run into them often, so you don't get a lot of practice. Those would definitely fall into the demon thing. And I've had houses that had conduits hooked to them from these type of things that's just sucking all the energy out of the house. And removing those conduits can be a little tough, getting rid of that, blocking it, and then actually addressing that entity is very difficult. And that's, if you have time, I can tell you a story about one of those.
Yeah, sure. The shaman that I used to know it wasn't the power of Christ compels you. It wasn't that. It was like love. He used bubbles of love or whatever to encircle them and bring them up and raise them up,
Yes.
That's what he used. So,
Yes.
Yeah, feel free. Go ahead.
Okay. So a friend of mine, Ron, and this story's in the book, and it's the only name in there that I use the actual person's name. Ron is a guy that has seen Bigfoot. He has been abducted by aliens multiple times. He goes on Bigfoot UFO hunts. He's a paranormal guy. And he started having heart trouble a few years ago. And I asked him, is it okay if I do some healing for you? And I would do the energy work on him, and he'd feel a little better, but then it would come back. And it just kept going. He'd get better, come back, get better, get back. And he got really sick. And so I wanted to spend a little more time looking, and I had him in the quantum room. I'm working the process with the warrior team and doing all the stuff I normally do to find these problems and then to heal them with love, like you talked about with the other shaman. And I see, again, this conduit hooked to him. And as I'm looking at it, I ask the question, where does this go? And the mist in my quantum room opened up, and I see this alien thing. It might be a demon, it might be an alien, I'm not sure what. But it had a triangle-shaped head, and it was in a ship, a spaceship of some kind. And it was kind of like E.T. He sees me, I see him. We both kind of screamed, and then he sent this energy at me that actually knocked me out. I come to, I'm pissed. This thing's hurting my friend. It knocked me out. I'm going to war. I go right back into the quantum room, find him again. Bam, knocks me out again. I had no prayer. So I didn't go back in that day. I spent some time trying to figure out what to do. About a week later, I went back in, tried it again. Bam, he knocks me out immediately. No problem, not even trying. I'm talking to different friends, and one says, okay, Marine, here's what I need you to do. You've tried it 3 times being the Marine, right? Yeah. How about you go in with love instead? Just blast that thing with love, see what happens. You talk about it all the time. Let's go shaman instead of being a Marine. I said, okay, let's do that. And I go back to the quantum room. I meditate. I bring in the love team. I'm just building up all this love energy, building it. basically summon that thing so I can see it again and blast it. Before it can do anything to me, I just blast it with love and keep sending love to it until I think it passed out and it disappeared. Well, when I did that, Ron was okay for about 6 months, maybe a little longer. And then he started getting sick again. And so I went back into the quantum room. There that thing was. It blasted me again, but it didn't knock me out this time, but it hurt me pretty good. So I just left that alone. The next day I went to the quantum room and just talked to my highest level guides and asked for assistance. And what they did was they had me sit down, and these are the ones that look like aliens, the very highest level. And they had me sit down, and they just started talking to me. 3 of them were talking to me at the same time. And I usually am not able to understand people. You know, if you've got a person in each ear, I don't understand what they're saying. But with this one, I did. I was able to understand all 3 at the same time. Everything they said made sense. And in a nutshell, what they told me to do was sit down, and then they said, grow, be strong. And as they were talking to me, in fact, I feel it right now. My arms started getting stronger, and you know, like you watch the Hulk turn into the Hulk.
Yeah.
Everything got bigger and stronger and more powerful. And I'm sitting there. They waited till I reached a certain state of just massive proportions. And then they said, rip, hit, drive, push up, slam down, smash. And as soon as they said smash, I was in front of that thing. I ripped open the ship thing that it was in, went after him, grabbed him, and, you know, picture of football tackle. I got a hold of him, drove him into the wall, slammed him up, smashed him down, and just compacted this thing into a ball. And I could feel it breaking and just as I'm wadding it into this ball. And I questioned whether I should even tell this story in the book because it is so violent. But I had to tell the truth, and I had to share things that had happened. And this was the only way to stop this thing from hurting and killing my friend Ron. And so I smashed this thing into a ball, sent it into the sun, and watched the ship and this alien incinerate until it was gone. And it didn't bother Ron again. And this has been, I'm trying to think how many years ago this was.
Can I ask a quick question? You were using love before, and this time you used force. Is that because it had got immune to the love?
I don't know why the guides had me do the force.
Okay.
And maybe it was just that was the only way to get through to this thing. But yes, love did hurt it. And again, I felt bad because what I'm teaching people is you're going to heal things with love.
Yeah.
And then I go and do something like this. So I've always felt weird. Shaman throughout the centuries have been looked at as not just a healer, but also as a warrior.
Yeah.
And so I had to use that aspect. It's not what I wanted. My intention is to heal with love.
Yep.
But that time I had to really hurt it. Now, Ron's heart has been running at 13% for about 7 years now. And he's actually getting stronger. His heart's not improving, but he's able to walk. He's able to go out into the woods again and do his thing. They thought he was going to be dead close to 8 years ago.
Wow.
And he just keeps going and going.
Wow, that's a great story. I hate to go on to shadow people because that may bring it down a little bit, but let's just close with maybe a thought or an observation on shadow people, and then we'll talk about one last time where to get your book and how to contact you, if that's okay.
Sure. So with shadow people, I'm going to say it's just like with Bigfoot. What sells books, what sells TV is scaring people. You know, the glowing red eyes, they're coming after me, this kind of thing. And I've literally interviewed over 300 people that had shadow people experience. It's shocking how many people have had that. And what I'm talking about when I say shadow person, I call it the watching man. People call it the hat man, shadow people. There's a lot of different names. And what this thing is about 6 feet tall. Looks like it has a pretty good size frame and is wearing some kind of a hat or helmet, a long cape or a long coat, a duster. And the whole thing is usually a dark color, a dark blue, charcoal gray, black. You know it has a face, but you can't see it. And it just seems very interested in watching you. And those are the ones that I've had contact with. Now, I have talked to 3 people that have seen those with glowing eyes and that were not nice things. And funny thing about that is all 3 of them were retired police officers. So I don't know if they had some kind of weird energy on them, but each of them, and they're all from different parts of the country, but 3 of them told me about these experiences, and those are the only 3 that I've ever talked to that saw anything, with the glowing eyes that seemed aggressive. The rest of them have just been wanting to watch. And there's different thoughts. They might be time travelers and we just can't quite see them. They might be slightly out of phase with us, so we can't quite see them. They might be us from the future, and we're not able to see ourselves from the future. And the reason I'm leaning towards the future stuff a little bit is that a friend of mine was telling me a story about he's laying in bed. He sees one of those things at the foot of his bed staring at him, and he can't move. And as he's looking at the shadow person, it just starts walking towards his face. It's walking through his body, up through his feet, his legs, his torso, to his head, and now it's behind him. And as soon as it got behind him, my friend's point of view changed from his own eyes to that thing's eyes, and he was looking down at himself. And it told him, I am you, we are us. Those type of sentences, those types of thoughts. And he believes that's him in the future having his end of life review. And that for some reason he was able to see that part of him as it's going through that lifetime review.
So do you think end-of-life reviews have like time slips where they go back and they find people and see stuff?
Maybe.
Or?
Yeah, maybe. There's so many things out there, so many trails you can go down as you're researching things that it wouldn't surprise me. Having said that, though, there's times, most of the time when I see them, it's one at a time. But I can remember as a very small child being in my basement riding I had a little plastic horse that had the 4 coils on it, the springs, 2 in front, 2 in back, and I'd ride that thing and just have a great time. And I remember 12 of those watching men in my basement watching me ride this horse. And when I see them, I've never once felt concern. I've never felt like a kinship or anything like that. I do feel a curiosity. I feel like they're as curious about me as I am about them. And so when I see them, it's always curiosity and a little bit of excitement, because it's, you don't get to see things like that very often. And for somebody that's in the paranormal world as deeply as I've been, it's wonderful to be where you're actually interacting with something.
No, that's great. We unfortunately are at the end of our session here, but let's wrap up with how they can find out more about Todd Wilcox, your website again, your books, your podcast.
Yeah, so the best thing to do is go to slipstreamshaman.com. And that will, if you're looking for the book, there's a link for the book. For the online course, I don't know what's going on, but the link isn't working. It'll give you a 404 error. But if you go to myslipstreamshaman.com, if you're interested in the online training, that's where you go for that, myslipstreamshaman.com. And you can still, you can easily find My Side of the Universe. Just type that in, and there's all kinds of cool interviews. 2 of my favorites, I got to talk to Bobby Clark, the man that played the Gorn on the original Star Trek, the slow-moving lizard man that fought Captain Kirk. That's my crown jewel. That thing terrified me and excited me as a kid. And I got to talk to the guy that did it. It was wonderful. And then also I had a chance to talk to Tuvok from Voyager. Those are my 2 favorite on there. And a lot of fun on the podcast.
So you're a sci-fi geek. You're a sci-fi guy.
Without question.
Yeah, okay.
I look at Star Trek spaceships the way a motorhead looks at a 67 Chevelle.
Oh, that's great. But last question, what's your favorite sci-fi movie, your favorite sci-fi TV show?
Okay, movie, easy question, and that would be Forbidden Planet. I watched that as a kid, loved it. I was freaked out by the giant crab monster, the energy crab monster, and that really learning that we create our own monsters is what that was teaching us. And love it. Any chance I get, I watch that. And, I would say right now, Paramount has done some magic. And there's a series on Paramount called Picard, which 3 different seasons of Picard. The first one was very good. I thought the second one was horrible. The third one is probably the best thing I've ever seen on TV. It was so
Wow.
good from start to finish. And so I love that, the third season of Picard. And I also love Strange New Worlds, which takes place on the Enterprise before Captain Kirk. It's Captain Pike as the captain. And that is a very well written show. And both those Paramounts just knocked it out of the park with those two.
Excellent. You gave us a lot to consider. Well, thank you so much, Todd. I really appreciate it. It's fascinating talking to you about your process and the book, and it's great to know that you've done a tool that people can use for themselves and to heal themselves, because I know people are reaching out to you a lot as well when you're just kind of overbooked.
Yes.
So I think that's an excellent thing, and we look forward to the next 2 books in your series.
Yes, and I'm still not sure if I'm going to go books or more in the online. It seems like people are a little more interested in the online just because of the interaction, the back and forth that takes place with the videos. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that just yet. But yes, either more online stuff or the books are next.
And is this something for this year or for next year?
The new stuff would probably be next year. There might be. I really want to do some things geared towards. There's 2 groups of people that really need some help right now. The first responders, the medical people, those type of people with the just unbelievable ugly stress that they deal with every day. I'm working on something to help them. The Slipstream Shaman training is a great start, but I want to do something secondary for them. And then there's the people. There's generations of people that feel suffocated, that feel hopeless. They feel like they're stuck in their parents' house forever because things are too expensive. And I want them to break free of that. And so the Slipstream Shaman training, basic training, which the book is about, and the online course is to help them get started. And then there'll be something to further that later. But those are the 2 groups of people that I'm really, really interested in helping right now.
So it's a lot of manifesting your reality going on with
changing your thoughts, cleaning things up, finding the positive, I told you about Glimmer Tree Family, and what a glimmer is when you find something really good. Everybody can see bad stuff everywhere you look, but that glimmer is when you see that flower coming up through the rocks, when you see the puppy, when you see somebody helping somebody across the street, or whatever the case is. When you see those good things and really focus on those, and it's really about helping people find the glimmer instead of the negative.
Well, we certainly need that. Thank you again, Todd. Appreciate it, and we'll have you back when the other series is done.
Thank you. I'd love to be back, Robert. You're a great host. I really had a lot of fun. This hour flew by.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode, and the world will know how swell you are.